Hello, and welcome to my take. Welcome to the second part in my Cornetto Trilogy series. You can watch any of these three videos in whatever order you want, but if you'd like to start from the beginning, then the link to my Shaun of the Dead video will be at the top of your screen and in the description box below now. As mentioned in the previous video, the Cornetto Trilogy refers to the films Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. The reason these films are called the Cornetto Trilogy is because each of the three feature Cornetto ice creams, which honestly might be one of the strongest links between these three films because they're all very distinctly different, albeit all sharing a unified sense of humour. So, without further ado, on to part 2 of this series, and on to my favourite of the trilogy, 2007's Hot Fuzz. But what exactly made this film so good? And why is it my favourite in the trilogy? Well, once again, like Shaun of the Dead, this was a movie made with an awful lot of creativity and passion. As I already mentioned in my Shaun of the Dead video, these three films seem to draw heavily from the personal life experiences of both director Edgar Wright and the lead actor Simon Pegg, both of which co-wrote the script for Hot Fuzz. These influences, for instance, the film's portrayal of the British countryside, is based upon Simon and Edgar's own life experiences, as they both grew up around the county which the film's fictional town Sanford was based on. In fact, much of Hot Fuzz was shot in Edgar Wright's own hometown of Wells in Somerset. Given that I'm something of a British person myself, I can verify that Hot Fuzz is the perfect parody of these types of places. Building off this point, I think what makes this my favourite of the trilogy is that this movie is arguably the funniest of the three films, and that's because it relies upon multiple forms of comedy. You have visual comedy.
What's the matter, Danny? You never taken a shortcut before?
You have verbal comedy.
I can assure you it wasn't my intention to upset the apple cart.
Yeah, because we all sell apples round here, don't we?
Your dad sells apples, Andy.
And raspberries.
Must be Sergeant Angel.
Yes, I am.
I'm Joyce Cooper. I trust you had a pleasant trip. Fascist.
I beg your pardon?
System of government characterised by extreme dictatorship. 7 across.
Oh, I see. It's fascism.
Fascism. Wonderful. Now we've put you in the castle suite. Bernard will escort you up there.
Well, actually, I could probably make my own way up. Hag.
I beg your pardon.
Evil old woman considered frightful or ugly. It's 12 down.
Oh, bless you.
And you have comedy that utilises both at the same time.
You mothers.
What this does is broaden the range of potential senses of humour the audience can have to enjoy this film. Some may only find the visual comedy funny, others the verbal, etc. But in doing this, a wider range of people can enjoy this film. Another element of this film's comedy is its use of reoccurring comedic motifs, some of my favourites being the twin desk sergeants,
Nicholas Angel. Oh, when did you start?
Tomorrow.
Oh, well, I see you've already arrested the old village.
Not exactly.
You in for the night? Go on, force free.
Hey, now, I need to speak to him.
He'll be no use till the morning.
Well, how's our guest?
Guest?
The inebriate in cell 4.
I don't know. Nobody tells me nothing. Oh, Sergeant Angel, someone from London called for you. Well, that's funny.
What's that?
I didn't know we had a mounted division. Nobody tells me nothing.
or following on from a clip I've already shown, the wordplay between Nicholas Angel and Joyce Cooper.
Fascist!
These also act as excellent foreshadowing in the film too. Having these moments of foreshadowing The plot of this film feels very well thought out, with earlier jokes having later payoffs in the film.
You do know there are more guns in the country than there are in the city.
Everybody and their mums is packing round here.
Like who? Farmers? Who else?
Farmers' mums.
A few moments later. That was amazing.
Thank you, Danny.
I can't believe I shot someone. There's a doctor who can deal with it. Drop him.
You're a doctor. Deal with it.
In doing this, the movie becomes significantly more rewatchable. I've watched this film at least 5 times in my life. On every occasion, I find something new, whether it be a subtle joke or foreshadowing for later in the film, such as this moment here. Which foreshadows what's about to happen to Tim Messenger in a genius and subtle way. Another thing I thoroughly enjoy about this film is its characters. It's an ensemble cast film. An ensemble cast can be defined as one that comprises many principal actors and performers who are typically assigned roughly equal amounts of screen time. Now, whilst it's undeniable that Simon Pegg's Sergeant Nicholas Angel and Nick Frost's Constable Danny Butterman the lead roles in this movie, all the other characters do indeed have around roughly equal screen time. What's excellent about this ensemble cast in particular is that they are all very distinctive characters played by fantastic actors. Whether it be Olivia Colman's PC Doris Thatcher, basically everything she says is an innuendo.
Doris Thatcher.
She's your only policewoman.
She's not a policewoman.
She is. I've seen her, bro.
She's a police officer. Being a woman has nothing to do with it.
Oh, I don't know. It comes in handy every so often. I could have given you the tour. I've been around the station a few times.
And what's upstairs?
Must have hit the sign at some speed. Took the old top off.
I've had my top off on this layboy.
Tess.
Told him several times. You shouldn't eat late at night.
I don't know. Quite like a little midnight gobble.
Cox.
That's me after a couple of points.
Nice one, Doris.
Nothing like a bit of girl on girl.
Or Jim Broadbent as Inspector Frank Butterman, who does an excellent job at portraying both the friendly, seemingly innocent inspector as well as the villain when the plot finally reveals it. Likewise, Timothy Dalton seems to be having an awful lot of fun playing Simon Skinner. In fact, Dalton has gone on record saying that he enjoyed playing Simon Skinner even more than he did playing James Bond, which is quite the compliment. Simon Skinner, in particular, was apparently written with Dalton in mind even before he was cast.
We always had Paddy in mind for, and Rafe actually, Paddy and Rafe in mind for the Andys. We always Jim for Danny's father. Always Nick, obviously, for Danny. Martin, Steve and Bill were always in mind for the 3 policemen at the top of the film. Billy Whitelaw and Edward Woodward, we were always, keen and determined that they should do those parts.
Other people that come into your sort of subconscious, you start writing with that visual, and for some reason you don't think that you would ever get those people. And weirdly, Timothy Dalton's casting was a little bit like that, is before we'd even approached him or even thought about approaching him in that slightly stupid way, kind of gone, you're like a Timothy Dalton type. And then eventually kind of what should have been clearly obvious right at the start, just to go, when do we get Timothy Dalton to play that part?
I remember when Tim started reading the lines, me and Edgar just looked at each other and went like this because we knew we'd found a man.
Whenever a role is written with a particular actor in mind, generally what tends to happen if said actor in mind ends up playing the role is that they are a perfect fit for the character, and thus a great character is created, and that's definitely the case here with Dalton as Simon Skinner. There's also quite a lot of notable actors that pop up in this film that you may not have noticed, such as Rory McCann, who plays Michael Armstrong. He's actually also the Hound in Game of Thrones. You've also got David Bradley as Arthur Webley, who's most famous for playing Mr. Filch in the Harry Potter films. You've got Stephen Merchant in here too as the owner of the Swan. You've also got Bill Nighy, the voice behind Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, as well as Bilbo Baggins and Dr. John Watson himself, Martin Freeman, who plays the Met Sergeant near the start. You even have Kate Blanchett, although you don't see much of her, as Janine, Nicholas Angel's ex-girlfriend near the start of the film.
See? It's only ever about the job. It's all you care about.
That's not true.
No, you're right. I do have that rubber plant.
It's a Japanese piece, Lily.
You just can't switch off, Nicholas. And until you find a person you care about more than your job, you never will. Besides, you were the one who suggested we take a break.
However, my favourite characters from this ensemble cast absolutely have to be DS Andy Wainwright and DS Andy Cartwright, or as they're often called, the Andys. They're just fantastically funny in all the scenes that they're in, and I think they have some of the best lines and moments in this film.
Got a mustache.
I know.
Knows everyone round here?
Yeah, if you didn't see anything suspicious, and who did?
Did you find anything?
Yeah. I was extremely shocked when I looked at my watch and discovered that I should be in the pub.
It's all my Andy! It's just Bolognese!
They're played by two fantastic actors too, with Paddy Considine as Andy Wainwright, who's best known now for his fantastic performance as King Viserys Targaryen in House of the Dragon, at which point I should mention that I'm covering Season 2 of House of the Dragon each week it releases, so if you're a fan of that show, be sure to check out my channel. Andy Cartwright is played by Raffi Spool, who also appears in Shaun of the Dead as one of the workers in the tech store Simon Pegg's Shaun works at in that movie. And having such a strong bank of brilliant characters, this film becomes incredibly memorable and distinctive, as all these different characters fit together perfectly for the tone and style of this film. Following on from this then opens an interesting question on what genre can we define this movie as being. It's clearly Edgar Wright and company's take on a police film, but what's clever about it is that it actually melds two genres of police film together, and that's a police action film and a detective film. The first example is very, very clear to anyone who's watched this movie. The film is jammed with Bad Boys and Point Break references. But, in also having an element of mystery in the plot that Sergeant Angel has to solve, it's also, in a way, a type of detective film, as we, the viewer, are given many details in advance, but we're too blind to see what they mean until Sergeant Angel figures it out for us. That is another element of this film that I really love, and that's Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's own love for movies bleeding into their work. I discussed this already with relation to Shaun of the Dead, where in that film, the fight sequences utilise similar swooping noises to Jackie Chan films as an ode to Edgar Wright's love for those movies. A similar pattern can be seen in this movie, only this time it's more explicit to the viewer. For instance, the Point Break reference, which is not only shown to us in the film, but is then repeated by Danny in the third act. I think that's definitely a key element in what makes this film so special, is its love for a genre that it's trying to be a part of, the police action film. But there's one key reason that made it not just any police action film, but an all-time classic one, and I believe that reason is the contextual backdrop. There are endless American police films, truly endless, and how many British police action thrillers are there? Not a lot. And this is something that both Simon and Edgar had in mind when coming up with this film.
You know, usually the Bobby is seen as a sort of slightly parochial character, when in actual fact, you know, we thought it was time the British Bobby got a cool representative. Most of the police that I encounter, if not all, seem to be slightly grateful for that, because we weren't really taking the piss. We were actually kind of making a sort of tribute pick.
I think this is one of the reasons that this film has remained so iconic and distinctive, alongside, of course, the fact that it's excellent. And that's that there really isn't anything else quite like it. Sure, we definitely have a lot of British police dramas, and even now some attempts at British police comedy. but we don't have many attempts at the more Americanized police action thriller style of film. Even more so, we don't really have anything that combines all three of those elements together. In theory, it probably shouldn't work. It should be too many genres smashing together at once. But it does work, and that's a testament to both Wright and Pegg's screenwriting abilities, as well as the whole cast and crew involved in the production of this movie. There are also plenty of other references to films that they love, such as this shot here, which is supposed to mirror a very similar shot from Indiana Jones' Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think also, it's about time we talk about one of the most iconic moments in the movie, and that is the fence jump sequence.
What's the matter, Danny? You never taken a shortcut before?
Each of the Cornetto trilogy have their own take on this gag. However, this is, in my opinion, the best of the three. And it works so well because of the contrast between Sergeant Angel's very cool and overdramatic jump and Danny's complete failure of an attempt. It's clever too how they filmed it. So the first three jumps are actually Simon Pegg, but then the last jump, the one with the flip, is actually a trained stuntman and acrobat. Now, it was still shot as one long take, so the switch between Simon and the stunt double was done using a filmmaking technique known as the Texas switch. You'll see this a lot in action filmmaking. The easiest way of explaining a Texas switch is that the camera frames the shot in such a way that objects in the frame be used to disguise the switching of performers. So in this case, the fence acts as the object of disguise. So when they call action on this shot, what would have happened is this. Simon does the first three jumps. There's a stuntman already waiting behind the last fence. And then when Simon has done his three jumps, he stays hidden behind the last fence, and the stunt performer, all geared up to look exactly like Simon, will then run out and do the last part of the sequence, which in this case is the jump. In fact, to even better explain, this film has its very own Texas switch shown to us in the Neighborhood Watch Murderers methodologies. This right here is another example of a Texas switch, only this time it's part of the film and we see it in camera. I also think this fence gag works so well in this particular film because of the genre of film it's trying to lovingly mock. As I mentioned in my Shaun of the Dead video, the reason this works so well as a reoccurring joke is because it mocks the very common action movie trope of jumping over fences in serious situations. Here, it's recontextualized to make it look ridiculous, both visually, given what happens, but also contextually as they're chasing down a shoplifter, thus making such a dramatic chase sequence feel silly. It's in fact a perfect metaphor for the film as it reveals an awful lot about the characters. Nicholas Angel is this larger-than-life police action hero, sent from the drama of London to Sanford, repeated winner of the Village of the Year award. He's brought with him his London methods, his London drama, but he as a character has been recontextualized into this quiet village. Danny, on the other hand, represents countryside normality, and thus he can't keep up with the action hero that is Nicholas, and thus he can't make the jump at this point in the film. In the early part of the film, Danny is a super fan of Nicholas, looking up to him as the police action hero.
I just feel like I'm missing out sometimes. I want to do what you do.
You do what I do. What on earth do you think you're missing out on?
Gunfights, car chases, proper action and...
But by the end of the film, they become equals and partners, which is signified through both of them being able to do cool stuff, rather than only Nicholas being able to do so. With some analysis, this fence scene then is the best not only for its humour, but also too for the deeper themes and meanings that it represents. I think that's another thing that contributes to this film's fun nature, is the fact that the cast were all having a lot of fun. Now, they were on quite a tight filming schedule, so they often had to work overtime, which was complicated by typical British weather, leading to delays in shooting sometimes.
The hardest aspect of the shoot, as ever, exactly the same as Shaun of the Dead, is the British weather.
Every time it rained in Somerset, and it did rain quite a lot, he would just stand in it, just stand there like King Canute, refusing to get under a brolly, and he'd just stand there on his own in the rain, saying, fuck you.
What are we waiting for? Cloud.
There's nothing worse than like having all the actors and all the toys at your disposal and standing, squinting, looking at the clouds going by, waiting for it to be like matching light.
Amazing. One day, too much rain. Next day, too much sun.
However, they all seem to be having a heck of a time making this movie, and that, ultimately, is a key ingredient, it seems, for great entertainment. You need the team to love what they do in order to bring the very best efforts out of everyone, and that definitely seems to be the case here on the set of Hot Fuzz. I personally think you can feel it in the final product. Only a movie made with love would have the level of Easter eggs and details present in it that this movie does. In fact, some of them even stayed overnight in their trailers whilst making this film.
A lot of times it would take me 2 and a bit hours to get into work, and then same to get home, maybe a bit more, and it got to a point where it wasn't worth it, really, to go home. So we stayed in our trailers, in our little caravans on location. So Simon would sleep in his, and I'd sleep in mine, but we'd get walkie-talkies, and then we'd talk to each other a bit when we laid in bed, and we'd say, good night. And then in the morning when we woke up, it's, hey, Simon, you there? Hello? You know, and then we talk to each other again.
Nick is my best mate, and what's better than working with your friends? And I'm not doing him any favours by putting him in our films. It's not like he needs it. I do it because he's brilliant. Do you know what I mean? And he's an asset.
Now that's some dedication to the movie that you're making. The editing in this film, in particular, gives it a very distinctive flavour. By having lots of fast-cutting shots, often combined with David Arnold's score, it really enhances the film. Let's take 2 examples of this. Firstly is the scene when Angel and co. discover Arthur Webley's firearms collection.
Mr. Webley, I trust you have a licence for that firearm.
I does for this one. Does for this one.
He does for this one? What do you mean by this one? Where on earth did you get these?
Found them.
You found them? And what is this? Sea mine?
Sea mine.
Now, this could have been done simply with a wide panoramic shot of the barn, but it would have been boring and uninspired. So instead, they used fast-cutting shots to enliven the moment and giving it more excitement in the process. They do this too with the processing of criminals in the film, when they take all the weapons to the police evidence room. In doing this, it makes the more boring elements of policing, paperwork and evidence collection, suddenly become more exciting. It's a clever way of showcasing how in whatever Nicholas Angel does, he makes it more exciting because he's a police action hero, and thus everything he does has to be like a police action film, even the more boring parts of the job. The film even parodies this very idea at one point.
Police work is not about proper action, or shit. 29. If you'd have paid attention to me in school, you'd understand that it's not all about gunfights and car chases. Fire up the roof.
Again, another example of the film cleverly mocking itself through filmmaking techniques. Second example of clever editing is in how it can create distance between locations. It's not always an easy task to showcase the distance between locations on screen, as conventionally, if a character leaves an area at the end of a scene, the next scene we see that character in is in the new area, so no sense of distance is created between the in-world locations. In Hot Fuzz, the film wants to showcase how in the middle of nowhere Sanford is, by showcasing its distance from London, and it does this through the 2 montage sequences where Nicholas is travelling between the 2 locations.
Hello there, Nicholas. Frank Butterman here, your new inspector. I'm just calling with details of your accommodation. We've got you a lovely little cottage on Spencer Hill. We'll look forward to meeting you anon. Cheerio. Nicholas, Frank again. One other thing about your cottage. It's not ready.
They obviously couldn't shoot this commute in real time. It'd be longer than the whole damn film if they did, and they also don't want to create a boring scene. So instead, they demonstrate distance through editing. In having a rapid flurry of shots and sounds documenting his travel to Sanford, the volume of images and sounds create the illusion of distance between locations, while simultaneously doing this in a way that's quick and doesn't take up too much of the film's runtime. Again, it's an example of genius editing tricks that really demonstrate the intelligence of the team who made this movie. In conclusion, then, Hot Fuzz's excellence is cemented by its brilliant and witty writing, distinctive characters performed well, and some fantastic filmmaking techniques that really enhance the film's overall quality. For me personally, whilst I thoroughly love each of the movies in the Cornetto trilogy, Hot Fuzz is, and forever will be, my favourite of the three, and for that very reason, it's likely to remain in my top 5 favourite films of all time. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, then please do like and subscribe, as it really does help the channel out. And the final part of my Cornetto trilogy series, The World's End, will be out in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. Thank you.